Started recording.
There we go.
Yep,
Can I close that?
should be good.
We are recording and we are
Okay,
live.
welcome everybody. I call the March 28th, 2023 Landmark Preservation Board meeting to order. This is a hybrid meeting, so before we move on to the agenda items, I'd like to acknowledge our hybrid meeting format. This meeting is being held in person, but for some of the board and applicants, they will be joining remotely. So at this point, I'm going to take a roll call of the board members by position. So I can't really see who all is on the screen, but I will call your name. And I'll start calling Member Thomas. Here. Member Babajanoff. That are not here. Member Nelson. Here. Member Groton.
Here.
Member Keene. And Member Safi.
Here.
Okay. In addition, we have Jason Greenspan, Community Development Director, here attending the meeting. And we also have or will have the following applicant representatives who will present items under old and new business. And I haven't really checked to see who all is actually present, but I will make the introductions anyway. So Brian Paladar.
Brian is not here.
Tyler Churchill. Harbor Holmes.
No, I don't think the Harbor Homes crew is scheduled for this meeting.
Okay, well, that's fine. I just didn't know. And you're Rob Okazaki?
I'm Rob Okazaki with Group Architect, yes.
All right. Kevin Donald? You're a row. Stephen Treffers?
I'm present. Yes, thank you.
Tyler Wilcox?
Yeah, it's me.
Okay. Before we begin, there's some meeting guidelines to review. So I'd like to reiterate some of those. For all meeting attendees, please speak clearly and pause frequently. Mute your microphone when you're not speaking. And for those making presentations, please pause periodically to ask if there are any questions. And for the board members here, at appropriate times, I will be calling on each member by position order, asking if they wish to speak or ask a question. I will also be doing this when it's time to vote. If you want to speak, please indicate by raising your hand. I may have trouble seeing that on a laptop screen this far away.
I'll keep an eye.
Thank you. This will help avoid problems with two people speaking at the same time. So identify yourself before you ask a question, please, or make a motion or second motion or participate in debate. The first item on the agenda would be the non-agenda public comments. If there are any members of the public here, meaning online or watching, they may speak now, if you can identify yourself. I don't know if the staff is, we have one in the room.
I don't see anybody online. If there's anybody here in the room that would like to speak.
Okay, can you identify yourself for the group?
My name's Mark Swanson. I've been in Bothell 31 years. I live on Northeast 183rd Street, just below Bothell High School. I'll try to make this brief. It's going to be disjointed because I only have 3 minutes. I grew up in Federway. Federway has 5 times the violent crime rate as Bothell, 5 times. I graduated from Mark Twain Elementary. 91% of the students there now are under the poverty line. I moved to Bothell when I could have bought my parents' house in Federway. I chose not to. 2/3 the price. It's a nice house. I commuted from Bothell to Tuckahoe for 12 years. It's over an hour each way. I earned to live here. I bought my house in 1994 for $195,000 at 8.25% interest note, making $38,500. You do the math. There are goldfinches all over Federal Way. But goldfinches, they only eat seeds, no insects. When I moved to Bothell, there are goldfinches at Bothell Landing. I haven't seen a goldfinch there in 15 years. The Brookings Institute, in analyzing the census, shows that the US population rate is growing at 0.12%. That's less than 1%. That's true as of 2022. Bothell is growing at 2.97%. 25 times the population growth. In December, the apogee of the sun on December 21st is 16.7 degrees. A building 55 feet high casts a shadow of over 200 feet. I'm very well aware of this because my property is surrounded by trees. I don't know what's going on here, but it worries me when I read the Bothell 2040 vision that my municipality is concerned about directing, what do they call it? Their demographic goals. Now, when I moved in here, there was an applied contract. Single-family residents, no multifamily dwellings and single-family residence places. 2 years ago, I had a deer and her fawn sleep in my backyard on an R8400 parcel. What is happening here? They talk about, I can't wash my car with just water in my driveway, but we're putting up impermeable asphalt pavement right next to the oxbow of the Squaw River, otherwise known as Sammamish Slough, near a marsh and a wetland. I don't know what's happening here, but this stuff is factual. Why do I have to tolerate 25 times the population growth, 25,000 people in the last 15, 16 years? As a single family resident who had, in my opinion, an implied contract from the community.
Via the zoning codes. Now,
Amen.
we're not here to.
I know that, but these things still enter into your discussions. I
We're at
know.
our 3 minutes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Our task here is to preserve and save things that are relevant to the history of Bothell, which could involve the buildings, but by the time it gets to us, it's pretty decided as to.
Well, let me give you one thing as response. This will only be 20 seconds. Bear in mind, the Growth Management Act does not have any kind of environmental or anything in it. We don't have to follow Olympia. You drive 70 miles east, you're in Catitas County. Where is my equal protection under the law? You guys have to communicate with staff in the ways you can and say, look, we are not beholden to follow the GMA. We are not. As an independent jurisdiction, we can fight it, file a lawsuit on numbers of different statutes, and be free of the Growth Management Act requirements.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you for taking your time.
Good luck, guys.
Thank you.
I know you're up against a lot. That's how a 31-year-old Bothell resident earned his right to be here, Felix.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good luck.
On the board.
I don't see anybody else in the room or online.
Okay. So the next agenda item is approval of minutes. And these minutes were available in our packet from the hybrid meeting last time. That was October 25, 2022, regular meeting held. So assuming that the people have reviewed that, would any board member like to make a motion?
I'll make the motion.
All right, that was motioned by member Nelson and seconded by member Sompi to accept the minutes as written and submitted. The motion is approved, October 25, 2022. Minutes have been made and seconded. I assume there's no discussion on that since it seemed The motion passed unanimously. Now we're on to new business. Our first item is negotiation or alternatives to demolition of 324 Bothell Everett Highway. And just for quick note, that's in Snohomish County, right up by the Safeway store. So is there anyone in the waiting room? I believe there is, other than the representatives of the applicant, who wishes to make a public comment before we start? And if so, identify yourself in some way. Raise a hand.
I don't see anybody in our waiting room.
Okay. So just by way of intro, the building is located at 324 Bothell Everett Highway. It is listed on the Bothell Historic Resource Inventory, known as the HRI, and is therefore subject to regulations of Bothell Municipal Code, VMC 2228.060. Additionally, the building has been determined eligible for Bothell Register of Historic Landmarks under Criterion D as an example of a craftsman bungalow. So I now invite the applicant to make the presentation on the historic elements of the structure and discuss the demolition alternatives or proposed mitigation. So with that, I'll turn over the floor.
I will start. I'm Stephen Treffers. I'm with Rincon Consultants. I am an architectural historian who prepared the historical resource evaluation that was included as part of the agenda for this evening. I was retained on behalf of Tyler Wilcox here, who is the project applicant. I first off, also, I wanted to say thank you for accommodating us in the virtual format here today. I appreciate it. We're all kind of adjusting to the new normal here, so thank you for being accommodating. I originally was going to share some of the photos from the report that we provided, but I know you're looking at me on a laptop right now, so I imagine it might be rather difficult to see those. So I'm going to walk through the history of the property a little bit, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you have along the way. I definitely will pause, and if you have any items you'd like some clarification on, by all means, please feel free to stop me. I'd be happy to speak to those.
Mr. Jarvis, feel free to share your screen if you'd like. I mean, it is a small laptop, but if it makes it easier to illustrate, we should be able to see a little bit.
Okay, I might pull up a couple photos along the way. So I'm going to speak a little bit about the existing conditions of the house and the history and our conclusions that were initially provided to the city. Tyler was going to speak after me as it relates to the demolition alternatives analysis and the proposed mitigation for the demolition. So we were retained back in September. We prepared archival research that this property, as you mentioned, is in Snohomish County. So we did some research with the assessor, also reviewed historic topographic maps, city directories, et cetera, to understand the initial construction history of the property, its occupancy, and any alterations that occurred to it over time. I also completed a site visit of the property back in September as well, which includes the photos that are in our report as part of the agenda packet. As detailed in our report, the residence, it's a single family residence that was constructed in 1918 with elements of the craftsman style. In our review of both the visual observation and through our background research that we completed, we identified that it had been subject to a number of alterations over the years. It is capped by a variety of roof forms that indicate there are some additions at the rear of the property. Additionally, there is a variety of wood plank and shingle siding, although there's also some areas that have T111 or vertical siding, which mainly were used for the newer additions and for the enclosure of a porch that was underneath the primary porch, which is now a garage. windows are largely, there's original double hung windows, sashes throughout with multi-pane upper windows. There are additionally non-original vinyl windows as well as some sliding glass doors as part of the additions. And again, per our observation of the building and the research, we identified perhaps the addition at the rear upper level as well as the infill of the garage. And I'd be happy to share some photos that we have of the prior to the alteration of the garage as well. That prop.
Excuse me, sir. This is Larry Reed. Do you know when that revision to the garage happened?
It occurred, one second in my notes, I believe it was in the 70s.
Yeah, I think I saw pictures with it open, and now you've got pictures that close.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, there's we have photos, and I'm sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties on my end, but from the Snohomish property records, I can see if I can pull this up afterwards. We have photos of it. I believe it was an undated photo, but it appears to be from the 1970s when the garage was infilled. And I can pull that up here perhaps after in one moment. Again, it was constructed in 1918. We believe it was constructed by Peter Anderson, who owned the property dating back to 1891. He was identified in 1926 obituary as one of the pioneers of Bothell. However, we could not confirm that it was directly associated or that he lived in the building. He lived and owned this property from the 1890s onward, and it was constructed 27 years after they had acquired this tract. And we did confirm that it was one of several buildings that was on the property at the time of the construction per USGS topographic maps. So it was one of again, many buildings that were on a much larger property back in 1918. I know I see some of you flipping through the reports. We have some of the images of that on page 14 and 15 of our report. Those are figures 6, 7, and 8. By 1934, it had been transferred out of the ownership of the Andersons to a business that was, it looks to be Continental Securities Company. After that, in 1952, it was owned by an Irvin S. Walker, and which he subsequently divided the properties subdivided it into a smaller area. And Walker retained property until at least 1976. And so I'm sorry, here we have the property records suggest it was under Walker's ownership that there was additional alterations that were occurred in, I believe it was 76 here. So based on those our observation of the property and the background research, our initial recommendation was that the property did not retain sufficient integrity to be eligible due to the infill of the garage, as well as the alterations that had occurred over time. We did consider it for National Register evaluation as well as the Bothell Register as well. And again, I know that staff, we appreciate that came to a different conclusion that we did, that it was eligible under criterion D as a representation of craftsman style architecture. I'd be happy to, before we hand it over to Tyler, I'd be happy to answer any more questions. And while we are discussing, I will attempt to find here the photo of the residence prior to the infill of the garage.
Are there any board member questions? Because I know I've got one or two. I do have a question. This is Larry. I'm looking at the report that was written by Rincon Consultants.
Mm-hmm.
Page, the numbers have an intro, but I'm looking at the maps on pages 3 and 4.
Yes.
The regional location, and it shows what says subject properties with a yellow surround.
Mm-hmm.
The part that you're concerned with, I believe, is just the Snohomish County little triangle.
Correct.
The line. But there's also a portion that's on the King County side that on the following page, page 4, shows a residence on that property. And I just wondered, what's the status of that?
You're correct. Our initial report, and my apologies, that figure was not revised. Our initial report to the city, there is a additional property that's part of the proposed project. At 9,000 Northeast, I believe it's 203rd. Is that correct, Tyler? Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually, we've been approved by the city of Bothell to demolish it, and it's actually already gone. So
So that was included in our initial report. It was a cabin constructed in 1960, and we did conclude that that did not meet the local eligibility criteria, and that was agreed upon by staff.
Did just fall under the 50-year age, but I didn't hear about the staff report on that. So anyway, I was curious because, it's something that caught my eye. Okay, continue, please.
Tyler, would you like to speak about the alternatives to demolition?
sure, yeah. So I guess first of all, Pulte previously, I don't know if you guys were on the board at the time. We developed the Urban Village 1 and 2, just north of the Safeway there on Bothell Everett Highway. And the Old Country Village, that was also part of that project, demolishing it. And we were required to basically remove a couple historic buildings and offer them up for sale to the public, or we were offering it up for free. And we didn't really have any takers on that, so that was kind of our experience. And based on that, we're kind of hesitant to propose doing something like that. In addition to that, the condition of the building is not in a state where it can be readily moved. It'd have to be retrofitted quite a bit to be able to undergo something like that. So it's just physically and cost-wise not feasible. And I can go through these specific alternatives that are required if you guys want, or you can read them. It's up to you. I guess I'll just leave it up to you guys to tell me which way.
I have one question about the house itself. And when was it last actually occupied or used as a residence? Do you have any idea on that? I'm just trying to see how neglected it has gotten.
Yeah, I think it was occupied up until probably last summer, 2022.
I walked by it on Friday, I think, of last week, and it looked, well, all I can say is overgrown, but
Right.
Yeah, but it was a pretty fair shape.
I was gonna say the photos don't look that bad, man. It's just the green thing.
yeah, there's some moss on the roof, but that can be remedied.
It's moss on. It's new.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or the historical relevant stuff. The windows that can be completely been altered. They make a good case for the fact that there's really
Well,
nothing there
Yeah.
historically.
I agree, it's been,
this building has been looked at by the board in the past, for relevance for the various registers, and changes in it were relevant to its being deemed not in our top 10, not our top
Okay.
5 for sure. So this isn't a surprise.
yeah, so if some of the additions could be removed, you might get back to some of the bones of the whole
Yeah.
building, but you have empty walls to patch in, there'd be a lot of retrofitting, as you said, so.
And the additions were made for a purpose.
Yeah, it's turned into, just as a comment, just. It's a subjective thing on the house. I don't see it as historic anymore, just the way it's evolved. It's got additions, it's got strange materials, it's got garages, porches, dormers that weren't original, so.
Very hodgepodge.
It is odd. If you look at my paper, hodgepodge is what I wrote on there.
Yeah, it is. And that's been the case for, a number of years in terms of whether it would be eligible for the the register, or whether it be eligible for Bothell's register due to any kind of historic association.
And I think the report showed there wasn't really much evidence of historic people having occupied the house or certain or events happening there or anything else related to historical value. I kind of wonder what the land was even used for, because it looks like it sat fallow for years and years.
Well, and now that brings up something that has been mentioned in the past about the property to the north, the Moans property, and having an old camp on it, summer camp.
Oh, really?
And then I believe it was in the 80s, 70s and 80s, it was still being it was no longer being used as a summer camp, but the some various groups in the city were facilitating people in need of homes or residents to prevent homelessness. We're using it for low-income housing. And then when the Safeway development came in, then they were basically eliminated.
Yeah. So now the development south of Safeway is progressing right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, there's a note here. The applicant met with the board to negotiate alternatives to the demolition board. Oops, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. Scratch that. I misread my script. So anyway, if there are any no more questions, then I think what that leads us to is negotiation of what we do as mitigation for losing this house, remembrance of the property in whatever form is appropriate for this piece. And
Yeah, so as you guys can see in the report, we've just kind of brainstormed a few different ideas, through talking through different projects in the past, and these are kind of the things we've just proposed. One being just a plaque recognizing the original owners of the land, being the indigenous Native Americans, and then another being submittal of this report to the Bothell Historical Museum to document the history of the residents. And then another being a donation to the museum for on the order of $10,000. And then in addition, so I guess I didn't go over this previously, but the area that this house is in is near a creek and wetland. And as part of our project, we're required to fill a wetland, and part of those mitigation measures are for us to restore the creek and wetland below this home. And so we'd be proposing to do maybe up and above what the permit requires, additional plantings, restoration work in that area as part of the proposed mitigation.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but are you talking about rerouting Horse Creek somehow?
It will be temporarily rerouted, is what we're proposing right now to the Corps of Engineers, and then rebuilt. There's a couple of man-made weirs that are kind of below this home that need to be removed to facilitate fish passage. So that would be part of that project, and then removing all the invasive species of blackberries and whatnot in that area, and replanting with natives.
I noticed a lot of bamboo between the house and the street.
Yeah.
Yeah, that too.
I have a question. Are you, you've combined the historic Moan property into this, correct? That was to the west and north?
Which property? I'm sorry.
The Moan, and Anna Moan's property.
I'm not familiar with that name.
Currently, north and west.
North and west.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm referring to, is that going to be part of the, well, are you only working on this part of the former Peter Anderson plat? Or is it including any of the property to the east and the north?
So it's just the two parcels that are shown in the diagrams in the packet. And then there's one parcel to the northeast that those two parcels there are the main development area. Just south of the Safeway, and we'll be connecting to that Safeway parking lot and 242nd with a roundabout.
So there's one house that was eliminated. That was up above this house that belonged to the Moan family. And I think that, in your package referring to, or interpretive sign referring to this, more than just a plaque, please, would need to also encompass, some of the historic significance of the Moan family. That's been kind of, shall we say, paved over through some of this process. And is part of that, site.
What is this?
Well, there was, they had the house there that was up above it that, before Safeway came in, you just kind of drove right straight up into it, and then I believe they had the camp there. Okay.
Did that go through this board?
Yeah, it was kind of encompassed into the Safeway, and then there was a future peg put to it because there really wasn't a lot that could be done at the time.
They couldn't move the house, they exhausted all that possible.
No, that was a vernacular, wasn't a craftsman.
Okay.
It was early century vernacular, late 1800s.
Okay. Well, we don't just say craftsman, but I get the point.
Yeah.
Okay, so are we exploring options other than what you listed, the negotiation for signage, mitigation through money, and other things for historical value? What can
Is
we
there
think of?
historical value for a sign there?
There?
Well,
You drive by going to see.
it isn't just the drive-by. There needs to be a continuation of the connection that goes from that, you say Mercantile Corner down into Bothell. I mean, if you're, well, it took me 10 years to get that sidewalk that goes up the hill.
Oh, really? Okay.
It took me more than 10 years. That goes on 240th up to the residential areas at the top of the hill, Shelton View neighborhood and the area below. Okay, but that's where it ends. We do not have a continuous sidewalk from Safeway downtown.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Well, I would suggest just a couple of things that, our Public Works Department is currently in the process of working on the expansion of the right of way there to accommodate bus rapid transit.
Right.
It will extend from Canyon Park to downtown, and as part of that project, I'm fairly certain that there will be some sidewalk extensions and connections. As you're.
Well, what I'm referring to is that facilitates us having a place to have the interpretive sign. So ultimately, we would have a series of interpretive signs going from downtown to Canyon Park on.
But what are they going to say about that particular Peterson? I mean, and Peter Anderson, he didn't.
It isn't just Peter Anderson, it's also the Moans Corner, the other things that occurred there. There was camp, there was the, now I just the Bigfoot Tavern that was there for 50, 60 years. And also even referring to, when the, we were just talking about the,
Country Village?
no, not just Country Village,
Oh, the
across the
bus
street
stop.
Yeah,
where the bus stop
Grease Monkey.
is. Yeah,
Yeah.
and when we tore down that.
Mhm.
building.
Save some of the cupola and made that into a bus stop.
The Red Barn.
Yeah.
Red Barn, that's what
Yeah.
I was trying to think.
Red Barn.
Yeah.
I mean, I could picture it, this is like, what?
Hmm.
But there is a place that we can acknowledge these places as we walk, or we have a way to walk from downtown to Canyon Park. It's only a mile and about mile and 3/4, mile and a half.
As that gets packed in with more and more houses and more property, I think that would be more important, because I've lived in Bothell proper since 2005, and I didn't know the history that you're talking about there. So
Yeah,
it's lost already.
we moved home in 1990. And the loss along just Bothell Everett is just like, is staggering.
Mhm. Yeah.
But at the same time,
Yes.
it's that continuity. It's getting people to walk and move. That's a nice walk. It's a pleasant walk.
You walked it, I would walk it
Well-
right now.
Well, I don't walk it now.
Yeah, it's-
I've ridden my bike. I've been chased off my bike,
yeah, that's a dangerous place.
but that's what we have to foresee in the future. And then we can use that as a place to, call out, this is what was here. This is part of that continuity. It's also not referred to in here that one of the reasons that Bothell Everett Highway turns and goes north like that is because that's where they platted the route for the military road.
Oh, really?
I mean, that's the reference right over here in Red Brick Road Park.
Well, they did reference in this report that they cut right through the Anderson property to do that, kind of a sliced off this piece.
Well,
to-
that's because of where the creek went versus
So
the
they just
hill.
followed the creek and the
Yeah.
topo.
The military road, was this?
Yeah, the military road in the 1860s that goes from
Okay.
Puyallup to Bellingham.
Okay.
And there's remnants here and there.
Well, I'm gonna interject observation here as we kind of detoured off of these particular properties to looking at this whole section of property here that it's really not before us, and I'm not sure how we deal with the fact that there's some interspersed histories along this road, but the histories that are relevant to these particular properties are not before us at this time, and I don't know how we can work with that when properties are plotted and brought to us on an individual section by section basis.
But I think we have to.
Well, what we have to do and what we can do may be two different things.
Well,
I'm not sure how we,
we've got two other interpretive signs, one going in that's not in yet from the other. We've got the one that was done at Country Village.
Well, that's.
And we've got, which,
So you've never.
yes, which is not on the road, which is not part of where the bus lanes are. So we have an opportunity now to pull it back toward the road at least as part of that design. And otherwise, we will continue to have no continuity.
Well, we usually do request some regional history when we have
Yes.
these plans. Although, I don't know how specific, well, we could be fairly specific in the immediate proximity.
Yeah.
If I just take a moment, so the applicant has proposed 4 options for mitigation measures. One of which is a plaque, potential donation, a documentation of history, and wetland mitigation above and beyond what is required for their federal permit.
Okay.
So having read Ashley's report, her suggestion was that there would be benefit to the additional wetland mitigation plantings on the site above and beyond what's required in their permit. And,
But that doesn't have anything to do with the history,
It's-
so.
Yeah, it really doesn't
No.
speak to history of what's gone other than the natural environment.
so that's what I wanted to get a sense of from, the board. If that isn't something that's to your liking, you're preferring the plaque, just noting that the, site itself obviously has driveway, the house, other infrastructure
Yeah.
improvements, and there was a certain degree of public benefit to be derived by additional wetland mitigation. But if you do not feel that that's something that you would prefer, perhaps asking the applicant if they've thought about the option for that plaque in terms of location.
Well, I think that should come in through their zoning.
Yeah, and don't we still have shorelines? They're the ones that should be,
It's not always in the shoreline jurisdiction of
Yeah,
those
but-
wetland areas.
that
So
shouldn't be in the landmark.
Yeah,
it is one of the options that is available in our
Yeah,
code.
I understand
It's-
that, but
there's some way to get some trade-off, that's what.
I'm a little concerned because I was under the understanding in previous meetings that the Landmark Preservation Board didn't really have authority to require either type of thing in the last two here, either a donation to anybody.
Yeah.
That we can hold anybody to, or anything, I mean, the wetlands mitigation is just an additional kind of incentive to us to approve the demolition, and
But not something that we
But-
could enforce.
it's not something we even do.
well, it's,
We could request, but.
I don't know, I mean, I would want a city attorney's opinion, on any one of those.
Yeah, I would think that the notion of a this for that in terms of a donation perhaps isn't something that you want to consider, perhaps something if you're more comfortable on the recognizing the history of the site through a plaque and signage, if something you feel is more appropriate and more impactful, that's something we can talk about.
And the submittal of the report to the Bothell Museum, that's typically done by virtually everybody, even if it's just our staff member that's sent over to the museum. That's not
It's pretty much a given.
yeah, that's a given. That's part of the job.
I think my only concern on the plaque is that we have a very weak history here in Bothell, and I'm not sure whether the applicants are prepared to go to other sources, including the tribes directly, the Birth Museum, or other indigenous historians in the area too.
Do we know if, has anyone done research? Has the tribes got that far up off the river and use that?
There's a lot of research. I'm not sure.
There's a lot of research at the University of Washington. They have not wanted to share because they don't want any of their work abused.
There's sites along the Sammamish River.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Further,
And
but
up the creeks.
that doesn't diminish the historical relevance of the property, how it was used, what was used, who used it, those kind of things, what happened to people. So again, I don't know how extensive the applicants would be prepared to.
Right.
I think we can find out a few more items of information from the museum about some of the previous activities on those sites, because I know Pat Pierce has talked about them and her association with the museum and the landmark board, are relevant for that.
And then as far as getting a more extensive history, I think one of our next applicants is looking at, they actually did noting houses around the area that were significant, that were still intact. Again, we could ask this applicant to, look more extensively at the area, say from Country Village or the Safeway development down through to whatever the next housing development is, to be a more inclusive.
I think that would probably be worth more to this particular group's goal than trade-offs.
Yeah. Another thing too is, you know, a lot of people don't know or recall that the lakes up there, you know,
Pleasant Lake.
Pleasant Lake.
Yeah.
There used to be, I've heard, I think it was even Randy told, you know, former fire marshal, told me that they used to pull a lot of peat out of there
Oh.
and sell it. And that's a lot closer to this property than,
Yeah.
than the other.
Well,
It sounds like a motion could
Yeah,
be
yeah, I'm
made.
thinking-
I don't want to speak
I think we are kind of spinning close to a motion.
on the
afraid.
alternative, at least as being something that sounds like there's some consensus
Yeah,
around.
thanks for moving us
Yeah.
ahead there. I saw the staff recommendation in the report, and it doesn't sound like the direction that we're heading in. Because it said accept a proposal to accept the mitigation for additional wetland planting, which we wouldn't be opposed to. That would be a good part of the project.
Yeah, but I
Or-
just don't think it's relevant.
Yeah, right. And then also did direct staff to prepare findings and conclusions. Once we find this is what we're heading toward, I think, and I think too, we will need to see some specifics on the plat proposal before we can say that's it, because I think it does need to include some of the more regional area than just their piece of property.
Especially as they're coming down the road there, on
Mhm.
Bothell Everett Highway.
That corridor was early pioneers passageway, and a lot of people lived along that.
Yeah. I think
Could I
it's
just ask a question? Will this development connect onto Bothell Everett Highway, or you mentioned there will be a connection from the newer development going on currently above that? Down into
Yes.
this development?
Yeah, so 242nd is going to be connected to that Village Life development. And there will be a roundabout kind of where, you know, if you go up to 242nd and you turn to Safeway, right where that turn is, that's where the roundabout will be. So you have to go through the roundabout to get to Safeway.
They'll be using the existing curb cut to Bothell Everett Highway. There won't be a new curb cut from this development.
And removing the one that's there now for their driveway.
Right.
And you said there's talk about widening the right of way. Will that cut across their property line or just?
There will be some additional widening necessary for the bus rapid transit route. I just can't recall how much right of way would
Yeah,
actually
at least
be
one.
reserved for that.
and a sidewalk,
I'm just
going,
wondering,
walking through
Yeah.
that. Oh,
in terms of
Gary.
the timeline on development. For their purposes, in terms of developing more detailed history of the area and indigenous inhabitants. And where we would want that sign placement to be. And at what point. It sounds like there's going to be an awful lot of changes going on in that area.
Yeah.
yeah.
Rerouting the creek and
I think this is good to discuss it now though, because as they're doing that planning, that can be part of the planning.
Yeah, I don't think that the final design for that right of way expansion, sidewalk and BRT lane have been finalized. However, we can certainly work with the applicant and Public Works as they finalize that design to iron out a specific location for a sign or plaque. So if the board feels that the alternative for demolition is the selected alternative, we can work with the location.
Yeah.
Developer, and if you would like some more information about the content that's more, encompassing than just the site, perhaps the developer could come back to this board with that proposal.
Well, then, can we get something wrapped into a motion for that? Here, we want to take a shot at consolidating that?
Wow.
Yeah, wow, I know it's. What we,
I guess I'll make a motion, we can worded as.
Why don't you start it and we'll start writing.
I would propose that we request the developer as a mitigation measure, pursue a more extensive history of the area, including more expansive history of original indigenous peoples' use of the area, and report back to us with a proposal for signage that would be placed at a later date.
I just want to
Is
add,
that adequate to that? for
I want
the
to,
applicant?
I just want to add, after you say indigenous, I would say and pioneer
Yeah.
settlement. And I think that was a really good one. I think you got it great.
Both populations are important in the history.
I think it's good to get both though, particularly the indigenous, because there's not enough other opportunities. I would like to see a reference that, you know, this is the path that was used for the military road. Because we tend to gloss over that even though we had it pass right through the town.
And if I may to add, to work with staff on the ultimate location based on however that right of way is going to be designed.
It's a good point. Motion takes. It's a village.
Okay, now,
I need to say in there specifically that we are allowing demolition of the property.
I think that makes sense. Yes, that's the alternative that's being selected.
that's what we're looking at.
Well, then you just at the bottom of it, as opposed to no, in place of the demolition. Because
So this mitigation is
in place of the demolition.
In place of,
Not
not in
in place
place
of
of the, as a result of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. I get it, I do it.
Of course.
Do you want to take a shot at saying that or compare notes here a little bit before we phrase it into something? Kind of scribbled down some stuff, maybe illegibly. Is that close to what you wrote?
Do a decision on where it's placed.
No, we can't. We can only do it later when they get the design of the. But actually, though, see, doing a design of the works of best is just about deal.
And I'll have to repeat it, so it's gonna be.
Figure out where it is in proximity to where that stop will be. That's still also.
But even in
I guess we could say,
it's part of.
in order to mitigate any impacts which would occur through the demolition of the residents of 24,324 Bothell Highway.
It's good to get that up front.
We request the applicant develop a more extensive history of indigenous use, or indigenous people's use, and pioneer use of the area. Recognition
Recognition of the part of the military road.
So my question is, if we do that,
Yes.
if we do that, does that mean that if we choose the first option and these three are just gone, or
Then you have some.
we
Well,
don't?
two of them, from what I understand, they don't
We basically
fit
mitigate
with
any
what
use.
That's last report, yeah, yeah,
and the money.
can't force it, 'cause, yeah, okay.
That is requested to.
Is sent to the.
Or that, yeah,
I'm gonna ask for
so that's not really, it's, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
the motion. And would you want to make the motion?
Thought I just-
I just want to.
We have to get it on recording for the
Oh, we have to
motion.
get it on there.
Yeah.
Officially.
Make it official in the recording.
Yes, sir. That part is obvious, and the address is there. That
Okay, so, yeah, just the way that's phrased right there, mitigate the impacts which would occur through the demolition of residents at 24324 Bothell Everett Highway.
So to make it official, I'm going to ask the board for a motion on mitigation measures. Do I have a motion? Yes.
House. And once again, in order to mitigate any impacts which would occur through the demolition of the residents at 24324 Bothell Everett Highway, the board requests the applicants to provide a more extensive history of indigenous peoples and pioneer life along that area of the Bothell Everett Highway, to include notation of the original highway routing as a military road. Is that adequate?
I'm not sure if that is recording. Unfortunately, I can't tell with our. Was the applicant able to hear that motion?
Loud and clear.
Okay.
Oh, we're
Good.
trying to.
Good, we like having a good mic.
So it's been motioned that we. Motion that we, that's all I have to say.
We get a second on that.
Yeah,
I second.
we get a second on it.
I
It's
second
been
the motion.
recorded, so. Okay, the motion has been moved and seconded that. The mitigation is requested as outlined in that statement in the motion.
Yeah.
Look, there.
Sounds good.
Okay, so I'm gonna take a vote on that. Gonna ask. Yea or nay, of the board members that are in attendance. So on the motion that as it was moved and seconded, I'm gonna take a roll call and say yea or nay. So member Thomas,
Yay.
member, no, he's not here. Member Nelson,
Yay.
member Groton,
Yes, yeah,
member Sompi,
yeah.
and member Reed, yay, or yes. So it has been moved, seconded, and unanimously agreed to by the board.
I can't tell from here what it does. It looks like we are recording from here. I can't tell 100%, but it looks like it, so.
Yeah, I unfortunately can't really navigate around my team screen very well, but I haven't stopped recording. So
Yeah, okay,
hopefully it picks up on
it
it.
should be done.
So the next step on that,
I would like to, just before we move on, I'd like to ask, Community Development Director, to please, at some point, ask the city attorney in terms of the appropriateness of donations that we might acknowledge or work into these, or the appropriateness of things like wetlands mitigation. They're really not in the purview of the historic preservation board.
Sure, I will be able to come up with the do's and don'ts of appropriate mitigation. That's from the purview of this board, and make sure that you have that menu available to you.
Very good. Thank you.
And
okay,
I would like to see this codified, that
That's a given.
those are
Yeah.
truly given. So I know it's been happening, but
Okay.
okay, so the follow-up to that is we will request some graphic or plan for what this interpretation of the mitigation will look like at a future meeting. Date to be determined.
Yes. Our next regular meeting, I believe it is in April. I'm not sure if we'll be able to have something that quick, but
That's pretty quick.
oh no,
Yeah.
I wouldn't expect it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't expect it till a little
Yeah,
later this
Yeah, they
summer.
need some time to design.
And I would suggest, meeting with or considering, information from the museum at Bothell Landing. Because some of the information on how those properties around there have been used. Not just historically, i.e. pioneer 1800s, early 1900s, but more recently in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Because we're losing that knowledge of that.
Yeah, yeah. I'll raise my hand. Okay, that concludes new business. Unless anyone has any comments.
Other questions for the applicants?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I guess vote includes the approval of the demolition of the structure.
Yeah, we did need
did.
to craft that into the motion.
Okay, I guess I didn't catch all of it, so
Okay.
thank you.
Anything else?
I have a question. Do you make any effort to recycle some of the original parts of that building so they don't just all get
Salvage.
thrown away,
Yeah.
salvaged?
Yeah, we do have people come in that do that regularly, and can look at the materials and determine what is salvageable. But to be honest, when I walked through it, there was not a lot there that I knew that they'd be interested in. I can still have them do it, but it doesn't seem like they usually like the big old houses that are like have like the nice old doors and all the old trim and all that. They or big beams, things like that. So
A lot of good wood in that.
It could be. But old framing was old growth.
Yeah. I mean, there's old growth fir in my 1950s house.
All right, well, thank you.
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you for our meeting moving. Next item is old business, and thank you for attending. Welcome to stay if you wish, but the next item is a consideration of mitigation proposal for Dakers House, 10304 Northeast 185th Street, Bothell, 98011. Is there anyone in the waiting room? I think I see, other than representative applicant who wishes to make a public comment on this item? And not seeing or hearing any comments, then we can turn it over to the applicant for a presentation. And ask who's speaking, please.
Yeah,
I
hi.
guess
Yeah, hi, this is Rob Okazaki. I'm with Group Architect representing the client and the property at 10304 185th. This, I believe, is our third meeting with the board, and I'd just like to recap a bit of what has gone on since it has been, I believe, since the October meeting, since we last discussed this. The proposal has been for us to provide signage in the plaza little area in the corner of the development on the at the intersection of 185th and 103rd Avenue. And if you recall, we had proposed a location and form and the text of the signage, format of the signage. At our last meeting, there was some recommendations from the board to be a little bit more descriptive about the form of the signage, and also recommendations on the actual text. So in that vein, we did revise the text, at least the main block of text. The recommendation was, as the previous client had been advised, to include more information regarding the indigenous populations and history of the site and the area. This basic format of the signage has not changed to that. And we've also included and added an example of the form the signage will most likely take, at least as far as our proposal is concerned. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, please correct me if I'm wrong, but we are in mitigation of the signage. And so we'd like to try to get this thing closer to and get the board's approval of of proposal for the signage, the location of the signage, and the text of such. I'm not certain if the board has access to all the exhibit that we submitted. Is it worth sharing that?
We do have some images. I don't know what, there's more that we don't know.
No, there's not, there's nothing more than that was submitted.
Like the same one as last time.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything different than what we saw before.
If you notice, let's see here, let me just share and I'll highlight the areas that have been changed. Is this visible?
It's getting there. We have a white screen that we're looking at. There we go. We see it.
Okay. Yeah, sorry about this.
And we
Not
have
too
this
sure.
image.
We do have this image.
Yes, this and this has not changed. This is again representation of the plaza area at the corner of the site, at the intersection of 185th and 103rd. I'll move on to the next page. Again, this indicates the location of the signage being item number 3 in the corner. What we have changed, the main text below historic homes in downtown Bothell, that has been completely changed. And this has been done at the recommendation of the board, with the consultation with the Cultural Development Authority of King County, and I believe that Mr. David Burgee, I believe that was the name that was given to us last time as a recommendation. So this has been completely, this text in the upper left corner has been completely altered in order to give more focus on the indigenous populations that were native to the area. The remaining parts of the this context board has not changed. And then,
Give this to review, just give us one moment.
Tribal
sure.
paragraph.
So I guess my question would be, you're showing that sign that shows a 12 by 12 spacing. I don't think this is gonna fit there in print.
Yeah, I'm wondering about the size of this to make this all legible.
Actually, the proposed signboard would be 18 by 24, 18
Okay.
inches by 24.
That's much more reasonable.
And
Yes. And if you look at the 4th page of the exhibit, that's the basic form the sign would
I don't
take.
remember what it was before. I remember seeing it, but.
Okay, that,
Okay, thank you.
looked a little bit more like a pedestal than the other
the other one looked like.
presentations.
I like just the shape of that one that folds back at an angle, very clean and modern looking. This one does look cheaper. It's very good word.
I have to admit that the exhibit shown in the illustration is something we did get out of a stock.
Well, on page 2 of your report, there's two signage details, and they both have a similar form. But when we get to page 4, it's a different,
Completely different.
so it's a totally different type of pedestal.
It says 12 by 12.
Well, and let me say that was in part in response to, I believe there was some negative response to a more of an etched black and white sort of signage. This is one of the reasons we did move to something more of a color, something probably more in keeping with the park signage. I think you have on the Red Brick Road, correct?
So I'm looking at this single post pedestal. And you've stated that we're gonna have a bigger sign. That's fine because the mounting plate on this one is 12 by 12, which wouldn't fly.
No.
how is this, form going to protect the writing, description, so on? Is there a way that it,
Oh, it would be laminated. The sign is laminated. It's laminated, would be a sign, laminated board, and it would be mounted to that pedestal.
What would be the life expectancy of that lamination? As far as out in the sun and the weather?
it's been less than 10 years. That's why we had to replace the ones at the park at Bothell Landing and then put a cover over it.
And who's responsible for that?
We actually ended up paying for that.
I think so. In a nice location like this, even though it is nice, you're gonna have to expect people scratching it potentially and things like that.
Marking on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would expect that
Hi.
there would be some, go ahead. Is that Alice?
Yes. Yeah,
Alice,
this is
Alice is our client.
So thank you, everyone. Appreciate all your comments and time. Our goal is to preserve and let the community know the history of Bothell. So if your suggestion is that through your experience, being laminated is not the best material, we're very open to changing that. I think the most important is the content. And if you guys approve of that, we will find a better material and make it withstand the weather changes.
Alice, just for the record, can we just have your full name, just for the recording?
Yes, Alice on O-N is my last name.
Thank you.
Alice, I really like the idea of the laminate. My concern on it is the life expectancy has been limited with our weather. It's laminate, but the weather manages to get between the pieces. And we found that we had to provide some kind of a cover over it in order to protect it from the weather, or some kind of shielding. And then
Did you find out what would be a better protection? Because I'm very open to it.
as I said, some kind of a weather protection or shielding, basically a cover. If you look down at the park at Bothell Landing, we have the laminated signs under a cover.
Okay, I will work with the signage company to figure out how to protect the signage because of our weather conditions.
Yeah.
Will fade things.
And you said
She said it-
the
18 by 24.
sign will be 18 by 24. Which will.
That's our
increase,
proposal. Yes.
um,
Yeah.
My only concern on the content is in terms of the indigenous peoples. There's no reference to the last indigenous peoples that were in the area and how they happened to leave the area. And I think you'll find that the last indigenous peoples here were pretty much rounded up after the what's sometimes referred to the war in Seattle, or in, I believe, about 1856, 59, somewhere in that range. And were those that could be captured were taken to a fort, and I can't recall the fort name right offhand. And then many were sent to eventually Tuleo tribes area, which had been designated, and others left those areas and went to various tribes of the Sammamish, Duwamish, and Muckleshoot. But again, I'm just running that by off of some memory here in my previous readings, but I think we could have a little bit more extensive history there.
I agree. I think it's far be lost, except for to a few people. So it needs to be somewhere where people can learn.
And I'd also like to see an acknowledgement in that indigenous history that there continue to be native people in the area from various tribes and nations and that have continued to assist with the growth and development of the Bothell area. Something to that effect.
Of course, we're adding a lot more text now, so it's either gonna, something we'll have to give or the pipe get bigger.
Well, I'm perfectly willing to cut out a lot of the pioneer crap, quite frankly, but that's okay.
Is there any, I mean, is there any recommendation of anything on, remaining on the sign that the board would prefer to see? To be kept? Is the, for instance, is the, losing some of the, examples of the, other buildings, or is the, history of the existing house that we're, proposing for demolition? Is that,
You've got an area down here that there's no text in that
down below?
could actually
If you
be
adjust it.
used for that. Below the map and the homes pointing to
All
it.
right, we can reorganize a bit here and see if we can afford some more room for, some additional text.
I think even what Ray mentioned could be put down there, pointing to the fact that the indigenous people were removed. And yet, now 100 and almost 50 years later, they are part of the community and they contribute to the community.
Mhm.
Putting it down, basically putting it down here is a good place, among other. I mean,
Okay,
a little reformatting there would be work.
gotcha.
That's like the first 50
Don't
years.
leave any white space.
Yeah.
It's a white.
Enough.
I have a question. Is there other historians you guys can recommend? Because I hear what you're saying. But getting that information has been interesting. So if there's any other historians you can recommend, we would really appreciate it, and we would love to put on there.
Well, we are retaining a consultant to support this board. And I'd be willing to ask them to work with the applicant for having the appropriate language on here in the context that you suggested. That
Yes.
would work and save some time and build some trust.
Yeah.
Sure.
That would
I'm
be
happy to
great,
do that.
because we want to get it right. We don't want to miss,
I
yeah,
think
we
that's
don't,
entirely
Yeah.
fair.
There's several written histories that are available.
It's just getting it condensed down, right, to something we
And
can get
there's,
on.
I mean, there's a large Native American history program and students at the university too. So, and people I've called have been more than happy to talk with me. So.
so yes, we really appreciate it, because we want to get it right and the correct information. And our whole thing is just to do this right and make sure we're sharing the right history. So if you can share that consultant you're using, we'd be happy to be in contact with them.
Absolutely. I'll get you the contact information once we have finally inked our contract with them, which is pending within the next couple of weeks.
I think you've done
Oh,
really a pretty good job on this interpretive sign in terms of the content and the color, the format. And I think Ray is entirely right on about adding a little bit more of that context as something that's pointed out for the community.
would you be able to share their information before you sign a contract, or just let them know we want to contact them? Because
sure.
a few weeks out is a few weeks out for us. So we prefer to get this going. So in your next meeting, we have it done. And hopefully it is to your satisfaction and we address all your concerns.
Yes.
So You need something edited up and marked, maybe, just kind of, keep this, don't keep that, add this comment here, type of thing. Or just
I
interpret
think
from
they
our,
need the content.
Yeah, I think we can share what we heard this evening about the additional content and context to fill that space. Share that with our consultant, which hopefully we'll have on board sooner than later. Connect them with the applicant to make sure that it's appropriate and has a narrative that kind of flows with the rest of the sign. And maybe hopefully if it's the board's choosing to have them back, hopefully in April to finalize this, unless you would be comfortable with us working at the staff level, it's really your choice.
If it can be done in the next couple of weeks, send it to us.
Mhm.
And we can look at it and on something like this where it's just, in a way, it's just content pickup.
Mhm.
We can look at it and say, yeah.
yeah, it would be good to see what the
it's
real
just a-
fonts are.
It's just a refinement.
Actually, ultimately, it'd be nice to see a cardboard, full-size mock-up. You know,
It would.
just to be sure that it's legible, you know, this is kind of small, you know, some people elderly might have trouble reading, even at double this size.
Yeah, maybe if we're able to actually get a mock-up, we might even be able to use our plotter to print
Mhm.
out something
Yeah.
that's 18 by 24.
That'd be perfect.
Might be good.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, again, that's kind of my concern about, getting, if something has to be sacrificed, in order to try to achieve that, or if we need to go to a larger size sign, perhaps.
I really think that you perhaps have enough room down here at the bottom. And content can go from where the blue type
Sure.
is up here and flow down to the bottom if there's continuity in what, perhaps the upper area is related to the indigenous peoples and the lower area down here relates to some of the settling of Bothell.
Mhm.
I was just gonna say,
Go
like,
ahead.
yeah, that's basically it. It just, that top area seems a lot bigger for the indigenous portion than the smaller part for the pipe, but it's still there, you know.
And
I think that
it
looks-
flows,
that's a good idea.
it flows down here to refer to the settlement too.
I know you've probably got a graphic artist working on this, but I think this generally looks kind of busy. If you know what the word, I mean by busy, a lot going on. And it might be adding by deletion, if you, maybe even, this may be wrong, but those 4 houses on the extreme right. If they were sacrificed for the sake of spreading everything else out and making it bigger.
I've learned that people like
Lots of
generally
detail.
the detail if we're gonna do these. But
And people like pictures.
Yeah,
yeah, the pictures, the
I think we
visuals.
should keep the images. Yeah, it depicts, like, it gives them a visual of what
I
the area
actually
was.
think they did a good job, but that's why, with the type up here, I wouldn't mind seeing some type down there.
yeah, that'd be good. This one here from the south, for example, at the top, it's kind of a dark picture, and I know that's what you're working from is an old negative, but
Yeah.
it's really hard to see much detail in it. You lean in close, you can see buildings are there, see some trees on the skyline. But in a piece of the river down there before it got flooded. But maybe that can be made more clear, and if it's there, a little bigger.
Yeah, I think that is a good point because our technology and the digital copying
Yeah.
does enable us to fix a bit of that.
So to the best of our ability, we can work with our consultant
Mhm.
to make sure that we're having that content reflect what the board's wishes are. We can, I'm also hearing 18 by 24 is your liking, and that you would prefer some sort of cover so that laminate is
Is
more
protected from the
protected over time. And I believe the applicant identified a willingness to talk to their sign company and their vendor to show what that might look like. And I don't know if there are any other outstanding items.
Got it.
Okay.
So
It's like
to
for-
recap, oh, sorry, are you recapping?
No, go ahead, if you want to.
Oh, no, just so we get an understanding. One is to make sure that it withstands the weather. To the consulting part, I just want to clarify, you're going to talk to them about our content, or are you gonna introduce us so we can fix the content? That's
I think
what I'm
we
not sure.
can, once we have them under contract, which I'm hoping will be sooner than later, hopefully less than 2 weeks, but I can't promise that. We can introduce you to our consultant and have the benefit of this recording and this, in the minutes, hopefully, so that they understand exactly what the board's wishes are and get the right content on
Okay.
to the signboard. And then, I don't know what your additional points were.
Those are the important points.
I
Thank
think
you.
those are the main 2 points, yes.
We could probably turn that into a motion. Somebody make sure that sign is weatherproof and legible, has some longevity. That's more than she said, but, and that the city consultant work with what's been recorded at this meeting to finalize content.
I just want to reiterate, I really like the top to bottom idea. That's real something I'd like to see in the sign personally, but
You mean chronologically from
Chronological.
past to
Sure.
present? Yeah, that makes sense. A lot of people would like that.
I would just, I apologize for appearing to fiddle on my phone, but I was trying to look up on another local author of Native American history who's at the University of Washington. Her name is Alexandra Harmon. And she wrote a fairly extensive book called Indians in the Making.
I'm
And
sorry, can you repeat the last name again, please?
Harmon, Harmon.
Okay.
And she might also refer you to some other resources. It's ideal in these things that we have native consultation on them, but I understand that that can be somewhat time consuming.
Thank you. I think it's best if we wait for your consultant, just so we're all running towards the right direction.
If I see that there'll be any substantial delay in that, I will certainly let you know, but we're
Thank
we're
you.
very close.
Okay, thank you.
Really nail it down. Would a board member like to make a motion on this? Well, I could try to state it then. We, the board makes a motion that the graphic be presented for further review, making sure that the finished product will be weather resistant, weatherproof as much as feasible, reasonably. The city consultant will work to tighten and maybe even expand the content as we discussed today, including more information on the indigenous peoples involved.
Chronological order.
Yes, with the history arranged in chronological order, please.
I'd second that.
Okay, seconded by member Nelson. Okay, so motion has been made to ask for additional changes to the sign to be presented at a future meeting, hopefully within a month. Although that seems tight, but if they can do it, then that would be acceptable. Good. So if there's any other discussion needed, if not, we'll vote. Still vote. Yes.
I was just gonna ask, I believe your next meeting would be probably scheduled for, I believe, the 25th of May, is that, or March of April, excuse me. That would be the fourth Tuesday of the month.
There would be a meeting in April.
All right, and most likely we would probably need to get necessary information by next week, probably.
I think if May works for you, that's a much better schedule. 'Cause that could be tight with any kind of consultant.
With the consultant, if you say, yeah, it'll be 2 weeks before we can probably sit down with them. Yeah, we might be looking for May. May I ask the board, the motion you just passed, is not sufficient for approval? This is not an approval, is it?
No, we did, maybe we should add to the motion, it hasn't been voted on yet, we would prefer to see a full-size mock-up with text in the correct font and pictures,
Mhm.
you know, in proportion as to what.
Oh,
we
sure,
Would see on the real plaque.
sure. Yeah, you've made that clear, yes.
Is it possible to
So-
get the consultant's information prior? I know you haven't signed a contract, but it is someone you're considering. And we just would like to hear their expertise.
Yeah, I can work offline with you and determine what kind of information I can share. I'd have to speak with our contracts specialist to see how much we could share at this point, since we're not fully under contract, but it won't be long.
All right, well, the motion has been made and seconded to present further development on the plaque, design, size, shape, protection. I'll now call a roll call for votes. So, Member Thomas,
I,
Member Nelson,
Yes.
Member Groton,
Yes.
Member Sampi,
Yes.
and Member Reed, yes. So it has passed unanimously. And I believe that ends our old business. Unless anyone has a comment.
I do want to thank you. Yeah, I want to thank you for doing a really credible job on this. I think you're really close. And we're just tweaking it a little bit to refine the design.
Thank
And
you,
we'll-
thank you.
we'll
We're
keep
trying our
going.
best. We're trying our best. So we want to make sure we address everybody's concerns and we want to make sure everybody knows the history. So we appreciate all your help. And if anything else we can do, let us know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item is- Do what you
Do the reports from staff first or?
Well, the agenda as I've been given it on the script has the reports from board members first. And then-
okay, so next, reverse, that's reverse, next one, agenda.
Okay. Well, I've got the script.
No problem.
I'm flexible.
I'm not gonna make a motion at this time, but, I would, like us to consider as part of our, this year's activity to look at rewriting the Bothell Code 22.12, which is the landmark preservation board created. Is within that, and,
It's more of a request.
basic,
Zoning by people, or is that something we, is it board
Does the council do that or no?
no, I mean, I think it's perfectly within our purview to rewrite the code and submit it, to the council. The council has to approve a code,
Yeah,
but
that's-
the code revisions.
Usually comes through the, what do you call it?
Planning Commission.
Planning Commission. And we typically do it about every 5 years. We
The
go
planning
through it.
commission typically will, the way our code is written, would review any amendments to, the BMC.
But we can submit those to the planning commission.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
Is it
It-
advisory?
That's,
an
you're outlining the
request.
process.
yes,
We can
exactly.
certainly come up with changes, submit it to the planning commission. They review it. Then it would go to, well,
Then it goes. to
somewhere,
council.
several places along that, the staff is gonna review it and then it's gonna go to council.
That's correct. And we do typically look at the code more holistically every year or two to make sure that it's aligned with state law, that it represents our policies. So there's a way, we have a lot of other things also on their way to being revised. So there might be a good opportunity to kind of package something if you have some particular changes you want to Title 22.
Yeah, and I'm just proposing that the board have that on their agenda at some point to discuss what changes we might recommend and then proceed through whatever process. I certainly have changes I'd like to see, but I think it should be
I think that's
an
fair.
open discussion.
Every one of these things I call it, I wish this would have happened this way instead of this. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Because I mean, I could, there's an overemphasis on doing these kind of reviews. Not that they don't need to be done, they do, but, and not enough on the actual historic preservation.
Yeah, it's kind of,
We're basically putting them
Well,
almost.
some of it comes from being what is it, certified local government. So some of that is dictated by us having that designation, which means we have a landmark board.
Right.
But some of that comes down based on that. There was a time when we didn't do that many of these reviews because we didn't have them, but now that we're having more development, we're getting them.
More and more buildings are hitting that 50-year threshold as well.
right. It's true.
Is anybody doing
And-
an update of the registry?
Nothing active right now, but I would note to your point, we are updating the city's comprehensive plan, Imagine Bothell, and there are obviously elements that are related to landmarks and historic preservation. So that's a process that we're, even at the staff level, we may even come before you and give you an update, and that could be a great opportunity to talk about code amendments and some priorities, comprehensive plan as well, for what this board would want to review.
I gathered from your comments earlier that, we're hiring a consultant for landmarks preservation, not a staff person.
That's correct.
Right.
Yes.
So how many hours will that person have?
That's part of the negotiation right now, and how many hours they would be supporting this board. Supporting all the reporting to this board, all evaluation of our projects that hit that threshold for potential preservation or landmark status. I think it's a range right now in terms of hours, but I can't recall exactly what that number is.
So we did have a project started the full story of Bothell.
That will be part of that's perfect. That's a perfect segue into the comprehensive plan where we have telling Bothell's full story. That will be the full context of the beginning of our plan. And so that's a great opportunity to come back to this board once that moves forward. And I'm hoping that this consultant will have a pretty significant role putting that together.
So it's a fairly substantial amount of grant writing is going to be required for that. And I don't know that anybody on the board's all that qualified.
Well, it took almost 10 years to write that book and about plus the video, which started the writing of the book. But that took, I don't even remember how many grants, at least 4 or 5. Nobody gives you the, $30,000 that it really takes to do something
Yeah.
like that.
Well, getting back to this agenda, I don't know, board members, any reports?
I don't have any.
This one is just me personally. I had a 2-year term with this board, and it expires at the end of this month. So I given notice that I probably would not be coming back, just for personal reasons and family and travel, and just wrap it all into the personal sort of category. So it's been good. I really do have a passion for saving legitimate historic properties and landmarks in whatever form they're in. And hope everybody continues that. Hope there's a lot of good opportunities to do that. That we can make a difference to save something so that everything isn't all, as somebody comes back 20 years from now, it looks like it was all built in 2022. No, we want it spread out. We want, I think that's, speaking for the community, want to keep what's been around for the last 100 years where we can and add to it, build on that. And keep something that keeps us historical in a way that we have a story that is not cookie cutter suburban small. And that may tie into some zoning regulations, like we're saying built around here is, that's what we're gonna be known for a long time. Maybe the next 50 years, is what's happening right now. So anyway, that's my soapbox. I do, and it will segue into the Glenwood Castle, but that'll be your report, so. Anyone else on staff want to say anything? Okay, so we can move on to reports from staff, and I know that is the topic, Glenwood Council letter.
It is a brief report that I have for you. This email that we received in December brought up the issue of Glenwood Castle. If you're not familiar with the castle, or if you are, it's property along Hall Road. And we had received a request from the property owner for some amendments to our comprehensive plan and to our code to expand the downtown transition zone to an adjacent parcel. That would allow some development along Hall Road for housing. And one of the concepts that was floated was if the zone were to expand by one lot, that Glenwood Castle could be preserved but moved to that site directly adjacent and potentially be adaptively reused for some sort of commercial use. Those were conceptual plans. And the subsequent months, the applicant has withdrawn the request for the rezoning of that parcel and expanding the downtown zone. And so there isn't a request that's active right now for expanding that zone. We're not really quite sure if there's still an intent or desire to move the home or do any kind of adaptive reuse to it. But it did show us that it has maybe some historic integrity and value that we hadn't really highlighted and has now been highlighted. I wanted to draw your attention to that.
Where is this?
20-something years.
It's, you know, well, starting from the car dealerships that are down on the highway,
Yes.
there's a hill that kind of winds up the hill, that's Hall Road. It's at the top of that.
Yeah.
It's kind of over from up there.
It would be hard to see unless you made a right turn into their
Yeah.
driveway. It's almost impossible to see
Because
from
they let all
Hall
the
Road itself.
bushes really grow up.
It's a
Yeah.
map
We
there,
were supposed to-
help, it's kind of, right? But
Yeah, I walk by that probably 2 or 3 times every month,
Oh, wow.
and I was like, why is this not on the register?
Because they wouldn't let us.
Okay.
There were, every year a letter went out.
Huh.
And then we got a nasty note saying, don't send me any more letters.
So that road goes between the two parts of the car dealership right there?
Yeah, there's a little drive, looks like a driveway going.
And
It
they
takes
were
a
not
rough
like that.
curve.
But then you'd end up in their front yard?
No, not really the front yard. You go past an apartment
It
complex up
needs
the hill,
so many criteria.
and it's when you reach the hill, it's just off to the right.
you could walk right by it
Inside.
and see it, because
Yeah.
it's back. Yeah.
Well, they cleared it out a little
Have they
bit.
cleared it out?
So they're
That would
intending
be
to
really
expand.
tough.
Well, I think we don't know.
Someone was proposing.
So this is moved right now.
For the moment, the proposal to move the home, which was conceptual in nature, to this other lot that's next door and expand the zone is not active. They have withdrawn that request. That adjacent property owner, which had been part of the proposal, has withdrawn their interest in the expansion of the zone. So there's nothing active right now when it comes to this particular property. I would also note that across the street on Hall Road, there's a small Craftsman
Yeah,
bungalow
and that is. on
That
the
was-
National Register.
that was also part of the proposal. That would not necessarily I don't know what kind of protections that has, but I don't believe the concept plan showed that would be preserved. But
I hope so.
That's on the National
It
Register.
is on the
That,
national.
that is one of the only ones of its kind.
They called it an airplane Craftsman, just by the
Yeah.
shape of the dormers and things on it.
But you know, it does show us too that when we received a proposal for rezoning and we received concept plans, it creates the notion that there's an active development proposal, and there isn't. This was a conceptual plan that we were trying to weigh the merits of, and it helped the planning commission try to figure out what the costs and benefits were. But ultimately, it's been, for the most part, withdrawn. There are some code amendments that are still proposed that would facilitate development of the site. But a lot of that development could happen right now under current zoning.
Well, As I, as I point out in the letter, Kadi, Enguist. If you drive up there, walk up there, go up there in any way, you'll see that is really not an appropriate spot for commercial development.
No,
It really is. It's a neighborhood and it's prime view property. It's got historic properties. Yeah, it should stay low scale. My piece.
So, but this was, it was more of for your information, that's something that really hadn't been on staff's radar suddenly. Became very prominent on our radar as part of
Okay.
a planning commission proposal or something that was going to the planning commission.
Wow.
That's all I have to say.
Okay, all right.
So should I
Looks
move
like
to
we're done.
adjourn?
Yeah, do we have, are you moving
I'm
to?
moving to adjourn.
Okay,
I second.
a second move and a second to adjourn the meeting. So, the motion has been made and made by member Sampi and seconded by member.
Correct.
Yeah. Thank you. Any discussion at all? Then the roll call for the adjournment, member Thomas,
Aye.
member Nelson,
Yes.
member Guy,
Yes.
member Sampi,
Yes.
member Reed, yes. So adjourned officially, yes. Approximately 7:45.
Thank you, everyone.
Cool.
Thank you.
I told my wife I hope to be home by 8.
I told my wife that too. It's still making.